Hi, my name is Justin Richardson. I'm with Direct Colors. I want to take a minute to visit with you a little bit about applying acid stain to your concrete. Here we've got a slab that's already prepped and ready to go. We've cleaned it, we've etched it, we've made sure that it has good porosity. Those are a couple of really key things to make sure that you're taken care of before you apply acid stain to your concrete. Cleaning it, we've got a concrete cleaner and degreaser that is citrus based, works very, very well, does not harm the concrete. When it comes to profiling or opening up the pores, there's a couple of ways you could approach that. Really, you could go at it mechanically, which would be a sander or a grinder to open up that surface. A lot of times, machine finished concrete is so slick that it's hard for the stain to penetrate it, and if that's the case, you could diminish your return. So the product that we have is a hard trowel floor pre-treatment. It's a citrus-based product, so it's kind to your concrete, it's kind to you for application. It's not as harsh as the chemicals, but it'll do a great job etching the surface open, preparing for acid stain. This is a quart additive. We also do gallon and 5-gallon additives for larger projects. At Direct Colors, we try to make it easy when you're doing your applications. Each one of our products has an application kit that has sprayers. It has stuff like hard trowel floor prep. It's got cleaner and degreaser for up to a couple of hundred square feet. It's worth taking a look at if you're considering a larger floor application. So in preparation here, I'm going to put on some gloves, some eye protection. We're in a pretty ventilated space right here, working on a very small area. If you were in low ventilation or working on a larger area, I would recommend that you look into something like this. This is a half-face respirator. It's got the pads in here for fine particulates, so it'll keep you from breathing in some of the acid stain matter that gets into the air while you're spraying. It's great for a little bit of a larger or low ventilation application. You also want to have some eye protection. The kit that I mentioned a minute ago comes with a pair of goggles that is great for protecting your eyes from splashes or spray or anything like that. And certainly you want to have some gloves. These are nitrile safety gloves. Acid gets on them, it does not get through. Not to scare you so much about the acid stain. It is a true acid stain. There is acid in this, but the concentration is so low that if it were to get on your skin, you would feel it burn a little bit, but it's not going to hurt you. You would just want to, flush or get your skin wet and wash it off really quick. Today we're going to work with two colors. We're going to work with a Malayan buff, which is a really, really beautiful light brown golden color. Can even pull a little bit of amber tone depending on your concrete. And then we're also going to work a little bit with the coffee brown. One of the great things about acid stain is if I were just doing a single color, I'm going to get a little variation just applying a single color of stain, because this reacts with the minerals in your concrete. Unlike some of the other products that you might use, paints, tinted sealers, antiques, those are pigments. You're laying pigments on the surface. Very different with acid stain. This is really nothing more than a chemical concoction that you're spraying on that chemically is reacting with minerals in concrete. It's going to change according to the minerals in the concrete. So where they're heavy, you're going to get a darker color. Where you have a little lighter mineral deposit, you're going to get a little lighter color. Using two different colors of stain, we're going to push the dramatics a little bit. So we'll have real extremes in light and dark. It's a really pretty look. Today we're going to put a little bit of coffee brown down here and there. I'm not going to cover the whole thing, because if I cover this completely with coffee brown, my Malayan buff will never show. It's almost like a wood stain in that regard. If you stain dark and then put a light stain over it, it won't show. So we're going to accent a little bit with coffee brown, come back with the Malayan buff, and then spot in the remaining, and the end will be a nice variegated look. We put on some eye protection. Because we've got good ventilation, working on a very small area, I'm not going to wear the half-face respirator so you can hear as I'm talking. So here we go. We're going to put a little bit of this coffee brown down. Just going to squirt this out. We get a lot of phone calls with people asking about the application of this material and whether it's okay to roll it or sponge it or anything like that. You can really do just about anything you want in terms of application, but because this is acid-based, it's very hypersensitive to pressure, so you want to be careful with how you're applying the material. You could wind up with evidence of your application tool. A lot of people do like to spray because spraying kind of allows you to have a little more natural effect. So you can see I'm leaving some areas that are a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. Random. They're just kind of artistic in that regards. Okay, so we're going to let this set and kind of go in a little bit before I come back and hit it with the Malayan buff in the lighter areas. I'm going to soak what I've applied so it does get into the concrete. When you're doing acid stain, it's all, especially if you're doing a couple of colors, it's good to do a couple of coats of the lighter color. You could do a couple of coats of the darker color if it's the only color, but usually if you're doing a few, you want to do 2 applications of the lighter color so it can burn in and give you a nice result. Let me give this just a few minutes to soak in, then we'll come back. We'll do the Malayan buff application and show you what that's going to look like. And then we'll let this sit for about 6 or 8 hours. After 6 or 8 hours, we'll come back, check the color. By then we should start seeing real deep, rich coloration in the finish and pick it up from there. Okay, so we're back here looking at the coffee brown. It's been sprayed down in a pattern. We've let this sit long enough to where the brown tones can really deepen and richen up. Now we're going to come back and hit this with some Malayan buff. I'm just going to cover the whole thing with Malayan buff. The Malayan buff will not override the darker colors as we talked about before, but it will start to stain in and a little bit of a nice lighter golden tan in these other areas. So I'm going to put my glasses on and just start spraying the Malayan buff on. A pretty generous application here. Whenever you're spraying acid stain on, you want to spray till you have a wet look. Whenever it's wet, you can really start to see the differential of coloration, and you can already see how the Malayan buff's starting to come in with those lighter tan tones. Now, a lot of what we see on the surface right now is mineral salts from the acid stain. It's actually turning the concrete colors. That is happening, but a lot of this right in here is going to lighten whenever we come back and neutralize this later. And you'll see a little bit of variation or a little difference from what it looks like now. Two colors of acid stain, really great way to push the dramatics. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, you can do a single color of stain. You're still going to get light, highlight, low light effects. It's just going to be a little less dramatic. This is if you want something that's much more dramatic. We're going to let this set. Let the Malayan buff take in, darken up, richen the color a little bit, and we'll come back a little later and neutralize this. Very simple process, show you what that looks like, and later on we'll put a sealer on it so you can see the finished color. Okay, so we're back. It's been about 5 hours. We applied our acid stain. We of course started with the coffee brown. We came back with a single coat of Malayan buff, which you see in these really pretty golden tan tones. 5 hours later, we're about ready to neutralize. Again, if you're working on a slab, you do want to have your spike shoes on before you get back out and walk on this because it is still damp and you could still print this, so you have to be careful with that. We're just mixing, or we've already mixed a little bit of baking soda in with the water. We're going to spray this on and saturate this really well. We want to let that neutralizing solution soak in for probably about 15-20 minutes. Since the stain sat on here for several hours, this needs a little bit of time to soak in as well. If you get on there and start cleaning your neutralizer off before it has a chance to get down into the concrete, you'll get a surface neutralization, but you could still have some high pH below the surface. We'll go ahead and get this saturated. And again, this is a baking soda and water solution. You can also use ammonia and water. Either way, you can get this neutralized out well. The ammonia, I should say the baking soda has a ratio of about 2 to 3 tablespoons per gallon of water. You could actually spray your neutralizer on with the same sprayer that you use to apply your acid stain. That way you can neutralize all the material that's in your sprayer. You can see this puts a little residue down, and you can also see that it's kind of foaming and clouding a little bit, which is an indicator that it's just causing the acid to become inert. It's going to have some really, really pretty color variation on this. I think it'll be a nice piece by the time we come back and get this sealed up. You do want to saturate this really well. Get enough on there to where it can soak down into the concrete. Like I say, let this sit for 20-30 minutes or so, and then we'll come back. You can use a soft bristled brush like this right here. We do sell these on our site. The soft bristled brush do have a solvent resistant bristle on them, which is important when you're doing this for the acid. It's a nice brush to use, high quality brush. It's got a threaded hole so you could screw in a wooden pole and use this to go through and agitate. This will help you get the residue lifted. Once this is neutralized, which is in the process of doing right now, you're going to come back and agitate all this. Because the acid stain sits for as long as it does, and because there is mineral salt in there, you have to break that stuff off. Running a mop over this really isn't enough to get that stuff broken off. You've got to agitate it. And then of course flood it and rinse it thoroughly. As we come back and start to clean up, you'll see the process. I'm going to let this soak for just a minute. I'm going to agitate it with a brush, and then we'll clean it off really good, rinse it, and show you what this looks like. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes. We've sprayed the neutralizer on here. It's soaked in pretty good. This is going to be inert at this point. It's time to go ahead and start scrubbing this up. This is kind of the fun part, because all this interest that we see on here right now is going to be very different whenever we get this scrubbed away. Don't let that alarm you. If you're doing your floor, expect that to look different. That's part of the uniqueness of acid stain. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this is good and wet. And I'm going to just kind of scrub on it a little bit with a brush, agitate the surface, and then we'll kind of rinse on this a little bit. So you'll see things start to look a lot different. Whenever you're doing your cleanup of an acid stained floor, all this stuff has to come away. What happens often is when people are cleaning this up and they look at it and they say, "Oh, my color's coming off." It's expected that you get a color lift out of this. Like I say, it's more the residue than it is anything else. With acid stain, because it does force your concrete to change colors, whatever is scrubbing off the surface needs to come off the surface before you put a sealer on it. Try not to shortcut this process. Try to make sure your concrete is super clean. You should be able to run your hand across that surface and not get any color onto your skin. That'll be a good indicator that it's clean. Let it completely dry out, and then you can move forward with sealing. So we're just agitating with a soft bristle brush. We're getting a lot of color residue. I don't know if you can pick it up in the camera or not, but there is a lot of it here. And that's where you'll kind of see how that stuff is doing. We have a nice subtle marbleization between the coffee brown, the streak through here, some of that golden brown, and the Malayan buff. This is going to look really pretty by the time we get everything cleaned up nicely for you. So just giving you an idea. We're working on this small piece right here, but certainly whenever you're working on your floor, bigger square footage, you could buy bigger brushes. You could use the pole in this. Definitely agitate it. It's the exact same process you saw on this small piece, just on a bigger square footage. Okay, so we're going to take this outside and rinse it off, just so we don't have a big mess in here on our work table. And once it's rinsed off, we'll come back and show you what this looks like clean. I'll run my hand across it, show you that the residue is completely gone. We'll let it dry out and then seal. Okay, so we're back with our acid stained piece. It's time to put a couple of coats of sealer on here. We're going to start with a single application. This is our DCI water-based. It's a satin finish sealer. This will go on real pretty. It's going to have a milky appearance. Goes down looking that way as it dries clear. So let's go ahead and get a little pour down here. This is our 3/8 inch nap roller. It's a great roller for applying this material. It's the recommended roller. This could also be sprayed on, but the roller does do a very fine job. I'm going to saturate this all the way to the core. Make sure there's plenty of sealer in the nap. Bleed the excess out, and then we're going to start the light application. I'm going to let the weight of the roller do the application. I don't want to press down hard because you can get roller lines really bad if you start trying to force this into the concrete. You do notice that the colors darken and richen a lot whenever they're wet, which is common. It's what we expect. Acid stain before it's sealed is a little bit chalky and faded. Whenever it starts going on a little bit thin, just wet your roller again and the sealer. This is better than trying to force sealer out. Then come back on your wet line, slide overlap, continue the application. Acrylic sealers are designed to go down very thin. You never want to over apply these or get them too thick. Leads to other problems that you don't want to have to deal with. So I'm just going to give this one quick go over. After about 12 hours, or after this first coat, 12 hours after this first coat, we'll come back and we'll put a second coat on. The second coat will go in the opposite direction. So if the first one's north-south, the next one will be in east-west. That way, if you do have a little bit of an evidence of roller lines or marks, you can even those out a little bit. Again, as this dries, that milkiness is going to go away. These little bubbles are going to go away. That's not going to be an issue in the finish. We'll come back 12 hours later, get another coat on, show you what it looks like finished. Okay, we're back. The first coat of sealer is down. It's dry. Run my hand across this very comfortably. It's not wet. We've checked it. Whenever you come back and put a second coat of sealer on, you can always check this, press on it with your thumbnail or scratch it with a nail head. If it's scratching very easy or if it's denting very easy, give it a little bit more cure time. This is nice and solid. It's a smaller surface, so it's going to dry a little quicker than average. But we'll go ahead and put our second coat of sealer on. As I said before, the first one was north and south. This one we're going to go east and west, cross hatch it, and show you what it looks like finished. Now, water-based. When you saw us put this on, it darkened the surface quite a bit. As it dries, it lightens up a little bit closer to what it looks like unsealed. You get a little bit of color variation, a little bit of richness out of a water-based, but if you really want that real deep, rich color tone, a solvent-based sealer is about the only way to achieve that. Solvent-based sealer you got to be careful with if you're in low ventilation. It can be pretty overpowering. Water-based is very good for those applications. So I've loaded the roller up with a little more sealer. And we're going to do the cross hatch application real quick. Slide overlap, maintain a wet line. It's very simple to roll sealer on. It's not a hard process at all. Just let the weight of the applicator do the application. Acrylic sealers go on very thin. You never want to try to put these on thick. 2 thin coats is always better than trying to shortcut it and do a single thick coat. That's bad news. Gives you problems you don't want to deal with. Okay, so that's the second coat of sealer. Goes down a little milky, just like the first coat did, but this is going to dry nice and clear. We'll come back, give you a quick preview of what this looks like finished up. If you have any questions, you could reach out to our team. We've got a great technical staff here at Direct Colors. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, help you figure out square footages, product needs for whatever you're working on. Our phone number is 405-275-6657. Our website is www.directcolors.com. We hope to hear from you.